Welcome to Ciro's Corner. I am Ciro, and today you're joining me for episode number 3 of Ciro's Corner. And today it's going to be a completely different edition in comparison to our top 5 entries that I posted on episode 1 and episode 2. For today, I'm going to be doing a deep dive into Park Chan-wook's Oldboy. This film is very, very mature and has a lot of explicit content and deep content that I will be discussing in detail throughout this episode. If this is something that bothers you, please just click out now, as again, it's very mature content and there will not be any strings pulled or any punches pulled, as I should have said. In general, though, this is a very important piece of film to me, so I'm very excited to have the opportunity to talk about this art piece and give you guys a deep dive. Starting things off, you must know who directed this, as it is a Park Chan-wook production. Park Chan-wook had put out the Vengeance trilogy in the early 2000s. Oldboy is the one of the 3 pieces to the trilogy. Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, Lady Vengeance, and Oldboy are the 3. My personal favorite is Oldboy, and that's not really to say anything to the other 2, as I love both of them tremendously, and maybe one day Oldboy will be dethroned. It's just my proper introduction to Korean film, and as Korean films have been my favorite thing in the last 2 months, I owe it all to Oldboy. Without Oldboy, I wouldn't be going down this crazy rabbit hole I did. And to start things off, I'll name off the 3 characters that this film particularly follows. We have Choi Min-sik playing Oh Dae-soo, Yoo Jin-tae playing Lee Woo-jin, and then Kang Hae-jung playing Mi-do. In this movie, we are introduced to Oh Dae-soo, Choi Min-sik's character, right in the first act, right in the beginning. Through Act 1 and Act 2, we meet Oh Dae-soo and Mi-do. At the end of Act 2, starting Act 3, we really meet Lee Woo-jin, who we will get to talk about in detail. But Lee Woo-jin, played by Yoo Ji-tae, is just to get things going for this episode. He is my favorite villain in any film that I have yet to see. I loved the Joker for a long time as like a good villain, but man, Lee Woo-jin absolutely stole the show. And as we are going to talk about his vendetta and his revenge, we must learn who Oh Dae-soo is, and that's Choi Min-sik's character. So to start things off, we are introduced to Choi Min-sik's character Oh Dae-soo, as he is belligerently drunk and finally rescued from his friend. As it is his daughter's birthday, he needs to give her a call. So he calls her on the phone booth and talks to her, then gives the phone to his friend. When he gives the phone to his friend, Oh Dae-soo is kidnapped, and that is the last trace of him for 15 years. This is an extremely weird predicament for any viewer, as we're so kindly introduced to him, and then instantly he's kidnapped. And now, for 15 years, he is mysteriously kidnapped and held in a windowless room, and he's locked up, discovering many different things through the TV. And in his 15 years, he discovers that his wife is murdered, and he is the murder suspect. So with his imprisonment, clearly he is also a target to somebody. He feels that not only does he have something, that he has to worry about as far as surviving in prison, but he also has to worry about being a wanted man for murder. On top of that, being a prime suspect, he begins to train himself by punching walls on a daily basis. It's his own combat, and it's his combat training that he very I'm trying to think of like a comedic word for it, but he embraces this idiotic combat where he's just punching his walls day in, day out, staring at a painting. And he is just so lifeless. But as we have this camera documenting him, he has the human behavior. We see him attempt to masturbate through women on TV. And there's multiple times through his captivity where he tries to escape, and it causes to have marks on his wrists through the glass that cuts him. And overall, Odesu is going through a living hell in this prison when eventually, after he is counting down the days to be released, he's casually left let into the real world again and dropped off on the top of a building uh, in a briefcase, or sorry, a suitcase. He kicks out the suitcase in a very, very unfamiliar fashion. I loved that scene where you're looking at a suitcase from a wide shot and then the door kicks open and it's a man in a suit. And Odesu is very, very, culture shocked. He hasn't been outside for 15 years. The first thing that hurts him is the sun. His vision is blurry. He tells his story to a man. That man ends up committing suicide later on. And that's the introduction to Odesu's um, return to the real world. And as he is released back into the real world, he starts piecing everything together slowly and violently as he vows for his revenge. And eventually, amidst his journey, he meets an acclaimed sushi chef whose name is Midu. Midu begins to help him pretty quickly as they seem to fall in love. And Midu becomes a very nice catalyst to help Odesu exact his revenge. Amongst his works with Midu, he eventually meets Odasu, Park Chan-wook's character, the character Park Chan-wook, who actually owns the facility where Odesu was held in prison. And as he finally traces this, he wants to find out who did this, who held him in prison, and how this even happened. Through a series of gruesome torturing and teeth pulling, Odesu finds out who this is and that there is a person who actually did pay to have him tortured. And Mr. Park Chan-wook tells him that there are tapes that it was recorded, and he tells him the number of what tape it was. And eventually, he grabs the recording tape, and when he leaves the building, he has to combat with everyone. And it is an iconic scene where, with just one hammer, Odesu takes down an entire Korean mob. And while the cinematography is great in this, the score steals the show. We have a very boom bap, lo-fi hip hop beat with Korean influence in it, and it feels perfect for Odesu's combat. And eventually, we are finally introduced to the villain Lee Woo-jin as Park. Odesu is walking in the street, collapses. A man helps him, calls a taxi, sends him in that taxi, and says a familiar sentence to Odesu, which instantly makes him realize that that is the man that he has been vowing to exact revenge on. And while he drops him off, he sends the taxi to his apartment. We find out that this man has been spying on him. The person that Odesu wants to exact revenge on has also been very, very close in mind to him, as we eventually find out Lee Woo-jin has an apartment right across the street where he is revealed to be the person exacting revenge on Dae-soo and the person that imprisoned him and put him in this incredible predicament. We eventually find out, with this story unfolding, that Dae-soo's adolescence was really the cause of his trouble. He spread a rumor in high school about Lee Woo-jin's sister being pregnant with Lee Woo-jin's child, which eventually led to her suicide. This was a very insane reveal in the film, as we're introduced to Odesu right before he is leaving to go to Seoul for the military. And when he leaves for Seoul on the last day, or one of the last days, he tries to talk to Lee Woo-jin's sister, but it really doesn't work. So he follows them. And when he follows Lee Woo-jin, when he's following Lee Woo-jin's sister, he ends up finding the two of them, Li Wuzhen's sister and Li Wuzhen, together in a room. And while he's spying, they had an intimate moment. From that intimate moment, Odesu spread a rumor that the two of them were not only taking, place in a sexual relationship, but that Li Wuzhen actually got her pregnant. And the most, in my opinion, my favorite quote from this that Li Wuzhen says is, "Your tongue got my sister pregnant. It wasn't Wuzhen Li's dick. It was Dae Suo's tongue." And that, when that reveal is delivered, it instantly changes the mood for this film, but it isn't the worst that's yet to come. As we hear Odesu's tongue is the reason why Li Wuzhen's sister has killed herself, that's not the worst that's yet to come. Eventually, we are revealed that Mi Du is actually Dae-su's daughter, and she was manipulated and hypnotized to take part in incest. This collapses Odesu's world as his perception for life is completely ripped from him. We see his insanity break out. And while his insanity is kicking in, Odesu goes for the remote. This remote that he picks up is actually an activator for Li Wuzhen's heart. Li Wuzhen tells him early on that he paid an extra $100,000 to have a sensor on his heart that allows him to essentially click it and it will blow up, killing himself. So he doesn't have to go through pain. So giving Odesu the to kill him, finally decides to do this. Before he clicks that button, cuts his tongue off as a penalty for him. And when he's about to take his foe out, he clicks the button. And when that button clicks, the elevator closes. Li Wuzhen does not get killed from that. Instead, we hear the audio of Odesu and Mi Du having sexual intercourse with some very, very just dark dialogue taking place after you understand the relationship between the two. And we're met with Li Wuzhen's suicide as he kills himself to really just, I guess, and mark that no matter what happens in this case of revenge, there really is no happy ending. And as Dae-su goes to continue his life, we end up finding out that in the end, Mi Du and Dae-su each have a brainwash slash, hypnosis procedure that they undergo. So they live their life together and forget this insane incest. And truthfully, this film has so many turns that once it does ground at the end for that last minute where Dae-su looks into the camera with a smile of pain and just pure death, that's when we're finally sent back to this reality and understand that this whole 2-hour ride that we just had, not only did it feel maybe for nothing, but we learned that every character was not what we thought. So it's always nice to be misled in a very cinematic experience. I left some really decent plot points out that I think can still, like, if you have listened to this and maybe you're like, you know what, I still want to watch the movie now. There's still stuff that hasn't been spoiled that will absolutely make you go, what the, and overall, just the quotes, the cinematography, the dialogue, the score, it's incredible. Park Chan-wook is a true master, and Oldboy is a wonderful example of a masterpiece. One quote that I'm going to butcher, Li Wuzhen delivers to Odesu: "My sister and I could love each other after we knew everything. How will you and me do?" And that statement is like the true epitome of this movie. It really is about being able to forget the things that you really shouldn't. And it has such fictional tropes like I mean, I say fictional, but you never know, like hypnosis, and being hypnotized in general. And overall, just this movie is an experience that I I can't recommend enough, but with again discretion. Be careful going into it. But if you do check this out, leave a comment and let me know what you thought of Old Boy, as it really has changed my life in a very different landscape. And I love finding out through other ways that other people are touched through movies, that I also am by. So, other than that, that wraps up Part 10 Wook's Old Boy summary. I really hope to one, reach an audience with this, but to continue doing this, give you guys a nice little deep dive on films that you should totally check out. I rated this 5 stars on Letterboxd. I stand by that. I highly recommend you check this out. Log it on Letterboxd. Let me know. Thank you for being here for episode 3 of Ciro's Corner. Tune in next week for episode 4, and everyone, have a great night.